fixed operations as well. We have an all-star panel with us today featuring Dennis McGinn, the founder of Rapid Recon. We have David Simches from the Crown Automotive Group. Our good friend David Long is here from the Hansel Automotive Group. And Josh DeYoung from Velocity Automotive is with us. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Dennis and David, great to see you again. Josh DeYoung, a long time coming. Thank you. Very grateful to have you on the show. David Simches, so honored to meet you as well. And I'd like to start the conversation off today, beginning with David Long. And David, you're in Santa Rosa, California. Let's talk a little bit about your market, describing the economy and its influence right now. Here we are in mid-September on used car sales and sourcing. How do you see it, and how are you addressing any possible concerns right now?
So, used car business, we're talking used cars specifically, right? It's been really good. Most of my stores are up 50, 60, some as much as 300% year over year. So I hear out there that's a little pokey in places. The silver bullet for us is finally have the buy center buying about 40% of our retail inventory. Had it not been for that all coming together, I think we would be flat or down like most of the friends that I have in this space are experiencing. But, you know, when you buy a car from a private party seller, it's like a deposit slip, and we're buying 40% of our inventory from private party sellers. So we're almost insulated from any, knock on wood, almost insulated from any kind of recession that we might experience because they're fast moving, high margin. We know what we're buying. It's a win-win-win all the way around. So that's my answer to how the economy is right now for us, Ted.
David, give us some background and some color on that for those who are not familiar with what you're doing with the Buy Center. Tell us what that's all about and when you began that initiative.
So I started the first Buy Center when we met at DGDG, and Dennis knows this, back in 2014. And I hired two really bright guys with MBAs from MIT that helped me write a complete formula and process. And then they A/B tested everything. And since 2014, I've opened up today, as of today, 67 buy centers from here to Brazil. And the dealers that seem to be doing, the dealers that follow the playbook are purchasing anywhere from 25 to 45% of their inventory from private party sellers. So that's how it started. That's how long I've been doing it.
Wow. And background on Hansel Automotive Group. I know I've been out to see you. How many rooftops now and what franchises?
So we have 8 rooftops. We've been in business for about 65 years. And we have BMW, VW, Acura, Honda, Ford, Toyota, Subaru, just all the good stuff.
Yep. All right. Good. Great job with that. David Simches, let's come over to you over at Crown Automotive Group. What do you see happening right now on the state of the market, the economy, and its influence on your used car sales and sourcing as well?
That must have been for me, right, Ted?
Yes, David.
There
yes.
you go. The whole screen locked up for a minute there. So you know, we have a majority of our stores are in the Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area. And probably the thing that struggles the most is housing. So when you look at inflation coming down around the country, we're kind of one of those hot spots that inflation is still high because of housing prices. So for me, the challenge right now is really affordability. You know, there's low supply of used, which drives the price up a little bit. But you really got to understand that affordability index. We're not up 300%, David, but we are kind of trending up. It looks like we'll be up in volume and gross last couple of months, probably about 10-15%. And we really drive very consumer focused. But one of the metrics we've been focusing on as a group is how many of our new car deliveries have a trade attached. So we're real aggressive with sight unseen. kind of in that early pipeline. We talk to the stores, and I'll ask a store manager what step of the sales process is an appraisal today at your store. And you watch a manager kind of think, oh, meet and greet, okay, yep, needs analysis. Oh, we do the trade right away. I had one manager, he was very honest with me. He goes, I think the trade process should be step 3 or 4, but the sales people want to make it 8 or 9. I thought that was a pretty interesting comment. So we push very heavy to get and talk about the appraisal process actually being -1 today, right? So today, right, with the buy centers that are out there, with everything that a consumer has in their fingertips, you really have to mentally get yourself in a place where you realize they've already started the appraisal process. It's before they get here. So inventory has been really strong for us. Our focus now too is really stepping up on time to line. We use rapid recon. It's really important because I think at the 6-month mark, there was some comments made from Cox Automotive that they thought the bottom had come and things were going to level out through the rest of the year. And I think within 2 weeks of that kind of outlook for the rest of the year, Ford announced a $10,000 price drop on Lightning. So, I kind of laugh and say so much for things staying flat. So it's real important that when you buy a car and you're looking at that current market metrics, that you try to transact in that same market. And the only way you do that is getting cars out front and ready quickly. So we're pushing the affordability, pushing a more aggressive first price, getting managers away from that. Hey, I need my shot. First 15-day bucket, I'm going to go for it, and there's no time for that right now, we believe. And I think, focusing on getting cars from the public, maybe not with a buy center, but with an appraisal kind of culture that it's happening before they get there, and pushing to have 70% of our deliveries with the trade attached. That's kind of like our new focus. So if we can have 70% of our retail deliveries with a trade attached, it's kind of like David, right? It kind of weatherproofs us a little bit, because buying cars at the auction is a tough gig.
Yeah, absolutely. David Simches, give us some background on Crown Automotive Group. How many rooftops and about where are they located?
Sure. Dwayne Hawkins started Crown Automotive in 1969 with a Pontiac dealership in St. Petersburg, Florida. We've grown. We've got 11 franchises in St. Pete, Clearwater. We have 6 franchises in Tallahassee, right? So for me, that's a different geographical location. It's still Florida, but very different market. We have 3 franchises in Tennessee, and we have 3 franchises in Columbus, Ohio. So we have 20 rooftops and represent like 30 franchises. So, and 4 different geographical locations.
David Long, let me come back to you, David Long, on a follow-up before I come over to Josh and Dennis. David, interesting that David Simches says that, because we see so many initiatives now in the marketplace for that appraisal in the process, and getting that, as he said, -1, getting that as early as possible. David Long, talk to us a little bit about that, because I've never before seen the focus the way I do today.
So I love that, David. I actually wrote it down, -1. When you said that, I was thinking step 2 should be part of the EMI, which is the earlier manager introduction, right? Sir, let me have your keys. I'll go ahead and start your appraisal while you're selecting your vehicle. But I never really thought about it in the form of -1, but I love that. So we try to push every single customer into our trade portal to start there. But I actually haven't measured it the way that you just said until today. Now I'm going to start. And I wanted just a little proviso. I'm looking at the numbers, 175% year over year, 122% up year over year, 133%. So I was wrong. It wasn't 300%. It was 300% on Friday, and we had a crappy week. So now I'm going to have to go get really upset with people for being only up 175% year over year. But David, thank you for that. I love that -1, and we want to get everybody to appraise. That's why when I hear somebody say, my look to book, and they get all proud, my look to book is 55%. And then I look at a 25 car producer with 4 finalized appraisals. I think to myself, why don't we drive that number down? Work hard to go from 45 to 35 and finalize twice the amount of appraisals. You'll have more success. Does that make sense, Ted?
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. Josh DeYoung, you work with a lot of retailers all across this country. You see a lot that's happening out there in the real world. Talk to us about that part of the sales process. You know, we see service drive acquisition, has become a huge part of the conversation. Josh, what are you seeing right now?
I think if you look at what David squared, as we're going to call him, we look at the appraisal process today. I think a lot of dealers are really trying to focus on maybe some of the missing pieces in regards to, who's my appraiser, who's actually appraising the vehicle versus what my estimated recon is. And Dennis is going to hit on this, but what my estimated recon is for that vehicle. And then what do I come in actual, right? What is my actual spend on that vehicle? So we don't have cost to sell adjustments, and really starting to dial that information in, I feel like has really been a hot button for most of the dealers I'm talking to, right? Not only looking at trends, but looking at, do we have those constant same people failing in regards to what we're estimating versus what our actual spend is. And I feel like that's been a big, huge focus right now, because we don't want to have cost to sell adjustments because the market is so volatile. So for me, it's really been a hot button here recently.
Josh, I have never seen reconditioning at the top of the list the way it is now, these past 18 to 24 months. It's really at the forefront, and a lot of dealers are talking about it. They want to talk about it. Talk to us a little bit about that, because it seems that this is no longer something that can be done with a clipboard or on an Excel pad, especially with dealers like you have here, David Squared, who are doing some big volume.
Yeah, listen, I was a big proponent, obviously, during COVID to tell the message that you need to paint the house when it's sunny and not when it's raining. And I felt like it was sunny during COVID for a lot of reasons. We could focus on things that were more important. We had, maybe some slimmed down staff, and we could really focus on some policies and procedures in a store. Unfortunately, not many dealers did that. And so I feel like now that it's really a hot button, I think they really started to own up to the fact that they can't manage it. And you can't fix what you can't manage, and you can't manage what you can't see. And the reality is if you don't have a platform like this, you can't see it. And I'm a big proponent, obviously, of software. And I think software is supposed to make your job easier and more efficient. And if dealers really start to look at where software inundates their business today, whether it be the service drive with a write-up tool or a CRM or an internet lead management process, if you really start to adopt that same, philosophy in your reconditioning process, there'll be a recon tool in every store. So I think this just really starting to hit the forefront, like you said, and people are really starting to focus on it.
Dennis McGinn, you are building, and I say you are still building, a great company at Rapid Recon. I can't tell you how many retailers organically have brought up Rapid Recon, especially within the last year. So congratulations to you. Dennis, what are you seeing, and how does reconditioning enter into the discussion here?
Well, it enters into my whole world, as you can imagine, because when I started down this path 13 years ago, nobody really knew what was going on in reconditioning. They were all guessing. Nobody, frankly, they just didn't want to know because they knew it wasn't good news. But they didn't have any good information. And as Josh said, you have to measure and manage, otherwise you can't improve things. So over the last 13 years, I think we've been lucky in a lot of respects. But the used car business has become the profit driver for most dealers and most groups. And it has been for a while. COVID changed the ball game because it created the lack of inventory, lack of certain parts and that kind of thing. So it slowed down the new car business, which slowed down the available used cars. And here we are now post-COVID, and the average reconditioning estimate has gone from $1,200 when I started this thing up to about $3,500. And it's because the cars are a lot higher mileage, they're a lot rougher than they were in the beginning. And the point about appraisals is really coming to the forefront, because now we're thinking about the profit opportunity starting at appraisal. So -1, yes, that it all starts. It all starts at the appraisal. And what's really interesting is I've seen that somebody's in a rush to sell a car, and so they want to get the appraisal done. And I think dealers leave a lot of money on the table because of that, because they're in a hurry to try and make the person buying the car, or the new or the certified car, they want to make them happy. And so they want to make them happy that the trade. So as a result of rushing that, they let those sellers who know their car has, got some trouble codes that were fired up recently, they're, and so this is, we're going to focus on this for our enormous customer base out there, to give them the tools. So when they are doing the appraisal, they get a lot more insight into the actual vehicle. I mean, they can walk around and get the cosmetic and look at the inside and sniff it and that kind of thing, but they can't look into the engine. Well, now there are some ways to do that. So we're going to bring forward the time to line, the reconditioning process. We're going to bring it forward to include the appraisal process. And we're going to give those people that are rushed, because, they don't want to leave money on the table, but they don't have any ammunition today. Yeah. So we're going to go after that, because we owe it to our customers, for one thing. And we have the technology now to be able to tie this in, to kind of pull the reconditioning process forward and let them be right side up coming into the deal on the trade. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that, reconditioning has become mainstream everywhere. Used cars are where the profit is in a lot of cases. And now inventory is coming back in, is starting to build up. Some new cars are coming back in, meaning there are more opportunities for trades, buying centers, as both Davids have talked about. And I see that, like I've seen in the industry in general, and technology and computers and the stuff I've been involved in, we're starting into a whole new phase, I think, for this retail business, where it's going to get a lot more discipline. It's going to get a lot better at being predictable. And I think that's the biggest headache that a general manager or group manager has today, is they want to be able to say, this is how my processes work. I have them dialed in. And therefore, as things change, I can react, I can respond, and I can actually manage through these ups and downs.
I like that. David Simches, talk to us a little bit about what Dennis just mentioned, the discipline and the technology, and how that enters. I mean, David, you oversee a lot of vehicles and a lot of locations in several different states, a lot of rooftops. What has helped bring this technology to the forefront for you?
Yeah, so just a couple of things going through my mind. You do need to realize that reconditioning has been a negotiating point for store managers for a long time. Listen, I was trained in the 80s, and I was trained to overinflate the reconditioning value and then have the customer complain, wait a minute, I was at the tire store. I know I can get them for $800. Oh, Mr. Customer, if I can get the manager to take it from $2,800, would you buy the car? And a lot of that goes on today, with managers still. It's in our culture. So reconditioning at an appraisal and a sales manager level is kind of almost, I hate to use this word, a joke. So if a manager wants to stretch on a trade and still make it pencil out to 98% price to market, he may just be a little light on the reconditioning. If he's trying to, steal a trade, he may be heavy on the reconditioning. So that purity of really drilling down on the appraisal and what the reconditioning for the cars, Dennis and I were talking about this the other day, right? When we appraise a car, we should almost be launching the reconditioning at the same time, so that if we take the car and on trade, we have it. And what I really love using are the work items in Rapid. I don't know who else uses the work items, but work items are very similar to an opcode, right? That you would use in service. And they're easier for everyone to understand, right? They're easier for the consumer to understand. They're easier for the managers to understand. So you should have your work items. And what Dennis and I are working towards is, because we do a pretty good job with using the work items, we got to get better, is that during the appraisal process, you tag the work items and there is no messing around with those values. Okay, those values will tie right into our actual cost. So we want to tie the work items in during the appraisal process, so that when we trade the car, we can just send it back there with the work items already selected.
I like it.
If that's helps you at all.
David Long, what David Simcha says makes a lot of sense. Okay. I know that haggling back and forth. I remember going back to the 80s. I know you remember that as well. Talk to us a little about the technology and how things have changed and the importance of reconditioning and doing it in a more disciplined fashion today.
That was the word that picked my ears up when Dennis said discipline. I've never seen a great reconditioning process that didn't possess a great deal of discipline, along with intensity, awareness, to Josh's point. You can't measure it if you're not aware of it, and having everybody understand how important it is. So in our world, and you know Mike Weldon well, if it's 3 days, we got to circle the wagons. If a car doesn't have a full set of photos at 3 days and we're not like really clear on where that car will be and when it'll be there, everybody knows that that's our focal point. So I think that's super important. The technology piece, I can't, but you said something, David. Let me go back to, I don't know if you remember the AutoNation days. You may not have been involved with that, where we would bless a car and we would put what we thought the car needed in reconditioning and in dollars right on the window of the car. It's pretty much what you're saying now. It's just now with technology. So that's what I hear you saying. So that way, when we appraise it, and by the way, I measure the delta between estimated reconditioning and actual reconditioning, because what I believe is the closer we can get those two, the more cars will win at the curb, the more trades we'll prevent from sending to auction, and it'll just be a healthier ecosystem all the way around. So I love what I heard you say, David.
Josh, talk to us a little bit about that discipline. Again, you work with so many dealers, and I really like that word. I think it's so appropriate for what you're doing there.
Yeah, I think if you look at just, the discipline in the process, right? Most dealers today are not doing trade walks, which to me is a piece of foundation that has to happen. It's not, in my terminology, it's a non-negotiable, because you have to set a precedent of where that car sits. Being in fixed operations myself in retail, David Long, we did that. It was the grease pencil on the windshield, and we wrote down, right? It was T for tire, right? We wrote down everything that it needed or what we thought it needed, and it was everybody involved: used car manager, fixed ops, used car technicians, right? Detailer, vendors, whoever we could get involved in that conversation was involved. But now, like you said, being able to use technology in regards to what exactly is recommended for that vehicle. And, me and Dennis are talking about taking it a step further. Having the data that we have, being able to say, hey, David, you're getting ready to take in a 2012 Ford Focus. On that 2012 Ford Focus, the right rear window regulator is the most failed item on that year. you probably need to be looking for that right rear window regulator. And being able to take, again, a predictability sense and what needs to be looked at or what needs to be taken care of will then, again, eliminate that cost and get the estimated versus actual. I also believe that most dealers today are really treating the used car department as a used car department, not fixed operations used car department and variable used car department, right? I've always think that there's always been a tug of war, right? A flat rate technician is getting paid on how much is being spent on the car. Parts manager, fixed ops director, used car advisor is being paid on what's being spent, and the used car manager is really trying to keep that price low. So it's almost like that sense of tug of war where they're fighting against one another. And when you start to streamline that process and understand that everybody's trying to reach the same common goal, has been super important for most dealers today.
Dennis, Josh talks about, and so do both Davids, about being proactive. And, Dennis, going back to those 13 years ago when you started off on this journey, Recon was not quite so sexy back then, but now it has become really, really important. And Dennis, you're really building something here, in being able to look, like Josh just said, into a window regulator or something that's a common thing that we need to look at, before we get that vehicle front line ready. Talk to us about that, Dennis.
Well, we have the ability now, for those people that are using Rapid Recon, and we started out with the average days of Recon, which they didn't really know before. So that was kind of the wrench turning part of the process. And we got that under control, or at least into people's hands, so they could start to see what was going on. I mean, and part of this, and we'll get back to the discipline, is everybody saying, I'm done with my part. And all of a sudden, you've got people who want to be accountable. Before this, they didn't, because they didn't really have any good information. They didn't trust anybody. They want everybody else to be accountable. But, so now we have a reasonable level of people saying, now I can show how good I am at my part of the reconditioning. And so we've taken that and taken it to the time to line, because the real measure is, well, is the car sale ready? Is it standing out there tall? So that part of it we've got. And along the way, we've put in some things like work items that we've mentioned here, which are the ability for the technician or the writer to be able to very quickly accumulate all the things that the car needs right there on their phone. Just click, 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 and you have a total. Oh, this is $2,500. And all this is being watched by the used car manager, who now has the hands on being able to say yes and no to every item on there. Now, the behavior of our dealers is the technicians are going to put down everything they can think of, and the used car manager or the approver is going to approve only the things they think are necessary to retail the car. Well, that's the beginning of this. Now we're going to pull it forward to add the appraisal part of this, because, hey, you got to have the thing right side up, and that's got to be part of buying the car at a fair price, including the things that are underneath the engine that need attention. But now we're very close to being able to provide profit per vehicle, a very close number for profit per vehicle going into this, on top of the average days of Recon and the time to line. So that's the next step for us now, is to give our dealers that extra tool. They've got most of it in their systems today. We're going to pull it all together so they can actually start to predict how their business is going to respond to the different changes, whether it's different sources for the used cars, or the market has changed. Everybody's got a different situation. But, I think the general manager has a tougher job with at least 5 P&Ls to deal with. And being able to give them the ability to predict their business, I think, is going to be a really big deal. And that's what we're going with profit per vehicle.
David Long, we're almost out of time. I got to ask you one follow-up question. You're in California, which is the leading state in the U.S. for EV sales. What are you seeing there with different powertrains, hybrids? Are there any challenges that you and Mike Weldon and the team are facing, in terms of reconditioning with these different platforms and powertrains? And does that have any effect on the Recon flow at your dealer group there?
Oh, let me see if I can answer that in a way that will make sense. So, one, I'm really excited to be in California because EVs are backing up everywhere throughout the country. And there's no way that the manufacturer is going to come out with some great incentives for Iowa that they don't come up for in California. So all the things that are happening around the country are, again, going to benefit the Californians.
Market.
This is another reason why I pay so much tax, I guess. And then on the reconditioning side, I mean, the cars don't need a lot, right? It's generally tires, making sure our customers know that buy the car, how quickly they're going to need to replace those tires, and making sure they know we are the tire depot, right? There's no better place to buy tires than for us. I think that seed gets planted the day an EV customer takes delivery, is how we can keep that customer coming back at the regular intervals. And then making sure the manufacturer doesn't send them oil change certificates, which happens. You may think I'm kidding, but
Wow.
I can't tell you how many people have brought in their coupon for their oil change on their EV and said, what's going on here? So I just think it's a great new frontier. Makes an old guy like me that's been doing this for almost 40 years, it kind of gives me new life and something to be excited about. And especially being in California, like 1 out of every 4 cars sold in California is an EV. So how can I not love that?
Yeah.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Ted.
David Simchis, do you want to weigh in on that? Because I believe Florida is a distant second, but it is second, in terms of that EV market. Anything that you're seeing, David, there?
Well, I have a question for David Long. So, David, did you come up with a separate checklist for EVs, or do you just give the technicians your standard check and advise format?
David, that's a great question. Knowing Mike Weldon as well as Ted and I do, he probably did, but I can't answer that.
Yeah, because right now we have a used car focus team together, and it's a mixture. The way Crown does it is we have some variable and fixed ops people mixed in there. So the fixed guys are going to take a look at a lot of their new car prep sheets and try to get an idea of what they do, and then come up with a separate EV checklist. I think there's still even some confusion. People don't even know which car did a charging cable come standard with or not, right? We tried arbitrating a Mercedes once, and then we found out because there was no charging cable, and we found out they don't come with one. Okay, so we're still learning our way through, but we figured if we organized a checklist and did it kind of pivoted off of what the manufacturer gives the dealer for the new car prep, would be good. I mean, I own a Tesla. I have got 22,000 miles on it in a year. I'm a heavy driver. So at least I'm comfortable enough to know that, the adapter for the Tesla charger and the cord, it's all supposed to be in there. I know what to look for, but I don't think a lot of we're taking them in, we're reconning them just like regular cars, kind of. We're just not doing the oil change. But I think fixed is still charging me for it, though.
Of course they are.
Yeah, of course they are. So we're going to try to come up with a really formal checklist to let customers know we kind of think we know what we're doing with EVs, and this is how we went through the car to get it ready for you.
I love
Gentlemen,
that.
fascinating conversation. I'm taking a lot of notes. I see some of you are taking notes. I know our audience is as well. We're going to have to leave it there. Dennis, one last question from someone in the audience. This is the season of FortStock, Woodstock. That is our theme. Question from the audience is twofold. Number one, were you at the Woodstock event? And number two, where were you seated at that time in Bethel, New York?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was a little busy at that time in 1969, trying to sell computers for Hewlett Packard. So I wasn't there. If I had been there, then I would be right in the front row because I like to see what the heck's going on. Doesn't matter where I am. I'm a curious person. But I, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this with us. I think, Fixed Ops has made a huge contribution to the industry with your program and being able to connect topics like this with a very large audience. So before we kind of sign off here, I just wanted to recognize that you personally have made a great contribution to the industry, just bringing this forward. And I know it's been a lot of work. So my hat's off to you, and appreciate being able to pull us together and do this. And yeah, I guess I should have been at Woodstock. Maybe I'll go out and buy a tie-dyed T-shirt now to make me feel like I'm not older than I am.
Everybody, if you want to reach out to Rapid Recon, obviously you could see that they are at the top of the conversation here. They're on their game. You've got some of the leading retailers in the country with David Long and David Simches here. For more information, visit rapidrecon.com. Dennis McGinn is also on LinkedIn, easy to find there as well. But rapidrecon.com, and I can tell you that a lot of dealers here at the roundtable are using Rapid Recon. So very grateful to all of you. Josh DeYoung, thank you so much. Great to finally have you on the show. David Simches, Crown Automotive Group. Like to have you both back on the show. Fantastic stuff. David Long, thank you for your contributions as well to Fixed Ops with the good work that you're doing on Monday mornings, all things fixed operations at the Hansel Automotive Group. And Dennis McGinn, the founder of Rapid Recon. Everybody, Rapid Recon here today with the A-list panel at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.